Back, guys. Wednesday, 11 a.m. Coaches call. Bring on the questions. We got a fun one today. Literally a fun one.
Hi. We recently talked about that kind of like the typical approach to training and how there is a certain lack of rules actually when it comes to training. I mean, every once in a while someone pops up and has like some kind of idea, but there is like no true guideline or like no roadmap. And what struck me as rather interesting is that you have a kind of like a gamified approach to training that you touch on in the book. Tell us more about that.
Okay, so first and foremost, training should be fun. But fun doesn't mean it should be like hilarious or you should laugh all the time. Fun should be fun. Fun is a different thing. You should learn something, you see progress, and um, most people start training and they want to feel like super motivated from the get-go. This
Mhm.
is not how this works. Our first goal in training and the gamification of training is to get less unmotivated. This is how actual progress and learning works. It's not that you're suddenly motivated. No, you train, and after training, and on the next day, you're less unmotivated than the day before. And at some point, you accumulate less unmotivated, which at some point will equal motivation. And then suddenly it's there. So, how does it work? So, the game of training. Every game needs four components. It needs players, it needs goals, it needs to identify what a win is, because otherwise there's no game. There's wins and losses in games, believe it or not, and you need rules that everybody agrees to. So let's take something as an example that everybody gets. Let's take the game of chess, right? So who are the players in chess? Well, the two people sitting in front of each other, or if you play online, they who sit in front of the computer. So there's two players involved. Brilliant. What's that in my world in training? For me, those two players are your bones and your muscles. In my world, muscles move bones, and that's about it. So those are the players. The second part is what is the actual goal of training? In my world, this is less bone displacement. That means less shoulder rounding, less knees caving in, less hips moving somewhere where you don't want it to, which will result in more progress and less pain, which will lead to less unmotivation. And then you get motivated because it gets better. In chess, it's super simple. The goal is to beat the opponent on either to draw a checkmate or whatever, or draw a draw or draw a checkmate. That's the goal of chess. Perfect. What is a win? In chess, this is pretty simple because there's a couple of figures on the board, and the first goal is to get as many figures of the opponents and eventually to get the checkmate at the end. And there's millions of strategies how to get there. What is a win in training? So if the goal is less bone displacement, that means a win is to have less bone displacement in every single session. And I have a rule attached to that, which is the last rep rule. That means there's no way you can avoid bone displacement if you start training. And even if you're super experienced, that is not the goal. It's less bone displacement than you just showed in the last training session or in the last set. The last rep rule means that your last rep should have less bone displacement than the first one. Practical example, you do five barbell back squats. Your goal is to have less bone displacement, less knees caving in on the last rep than on the first one. Chances are nowadays it's the exact opposite. You start off pretty nicely and no bone displacement, and the last rep or the last five reps or whatever looks like shit, to be honest. So we have to reverse the order. We won't go into details how to get there. We're just defining the rules of the game. Okay, what's the goal of, or what is the win in on the muscle side of things? It's super simple. It's using more big muscles. That means using less small muscles. Super fancy and super sophisticated. How can you measure that? And that's the win part, but also the rules part of it. How can you measure more tension in big muscles? It's actually super simple. We developed an equipment hierarchy where there's only exercises in there and equipment in there where you have to use big muscles. Otherwise, you will fail at deadlift. Perfect example is sandbag front squat. There's no cheating in a sandbag front squat. You can either hold it up here because your upper back and your lats are working, or you can't. Otherwise, it's going to drop down because you can keep your elbows up there. With the barbell, it's different because you can rest it on your shoulders. You can do funky stuff to kind of keep it up there. It's not a precise measurement. So let's sum it up. What's the game of training look like? You have the players, which is muscle and bones. You have the goals, which is less bone displacement and more tension in the big muscle. So you get less tension in the small muscles. Third one is how to win. Super simple last rep rule. The last rep has to have less bone displacement, and you have to get better at exercises that are going to challenge your big muscles. So what are the rules now? And that's what actually took me the most time in the book, to set certain rules that you have to obey to. Because nowadays, in 2025, we don't have rules for training. We don't have a set of rules. We have recommendations. We have like, okay, push your knees out of the squat, get your chest up, but it's very fragile. It's not exact. And that's why we teach stuff with, okay, your big thigh bone has to be there. Your hip has to be there. There has to be this muscle engaged, and it can be measured on the spot because we can see deviations from it. These are strict rules that we need because otherwise we cannot play that game with each other. It's impossible. It's like you and me playing a game of chess, and you're suddenly deciding that you can draw the pawn and go like 5 steps with it, which is against the rules of chess. And I'm like, wait, but I can't do that. It's like, yeah, but I'll do whatever I want. I can do 5. I can do this with the queen. I can do this with the king. That's not how it works. We have to set certain rules in training that you have to obey to, and then you can measure the outcome. We cannot play the game with each other, the game of training, if we have a different set of rules. And that's why so many people have no progress and no motivation training, because there's no real measurement outside of, hey, I've done 5 reps at 80 kilos in the back squat. It's like, okay, but if I look at your video, these are not Greg squats. You've done something, you've done an exercise, you have more bone displacement on the last rep. You're obviously using not your hamstring, but your quads on the way down. So you're using not the big muscles, but smaller muscles. They're not supposed to be used in a squat. So we don't have the same set of rules. And those are not my rules. I hope I can present the rules in the book as rules of nature, which is based on where muscles are attached on bones, etc. So those are not weird rules of mine. Those are things that have worked in practice, and I think relate as closely as I can and as I could, as of now, to nature, how movement is supposed to happen in nature.
And how can someone now practically apply? I'm just imagining someone who has a very kind of like a typical training plan. And I'm now hearing that, and I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? How can I apply that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's take a practical example. Let's take the bench press. Everybody loves bench press. I love bench press. Everybody loves bench press. Every human on earth and every kid should bench press more. Okay, perfect. So here are my rules for the bench press. The rule is your shoulder blades have to be together and push down in your starting position. That means you're starting in a position like this. Shoulder blades together, shoulder blades down. Depressed, shoulder blades are depressed. You don't have to be depressed. You can be happy. That's totally fine. And those are the set of rules that cannot change while you do the bench press. 0 deviation from having your shoulder blades together and your shoulder blades down. Why is that so important? Because that's going to ensure that at least you're going in the right direction muscle-wise. Because if you stay in that position, that means your lats, your latissimus dorsi, are going to be on throughout the whole lift, right? That means no matter if you're going up or down, there's 0 deviation on those rules. 0. That's it. Those are the rules. If you try to avoid those rules, that means you're going to round your shoulders. That means your shoulder blades are going to come out to the sides. Like, that's fine, but that's not our Greg's bench press. This is not how we train. This is imprecise. You can do whatever you want, but this is long-term, gonna stall progress in your bench press. This is gonna, whatever, hurt your shoulder at some point, because apparently muscles don't like moving under tension when the tendon is under tension. Those are the set of rules. That's the bench press. Let's take the second one. Let's take the opposite. Let's take the squat, for example, right? And let's take the box squat. Okay, our set of rules is your knee. That means the end of your big thigh bone. Big thigh bone, the end of the big thigh bone, the bottom end is your knee. That's it. This knee, end of your big thigh bone, has to stay behind your ankles at all times. Why am I saying this? Same with the bench press and the shoulder blades. This is going to ensure that your hamstring can actually create and absorb tension on the way down in the squat. Wait, I have to bring my hip into the camera. Here's the hip, that's the knee. All right, so when you go down with your hips, your knee has to stay behind your ankle. That I don't like that rule because it's hard, but I like it because that ensures that I have to use my hamstring on the way down. As soon as I shoot my knee forward or do something else, my hamstring are going to turn off. And that's a turn off for me in training, right? So that's a set of rules that we have to agree on because we have a goal, which is less bone displacement and more big muscle engagement. You can choose to not obey those rules and say those rules are shit. That's fine, but I know that they're working and I can guarantee progress. That's how I can guarantee progress because I have rules, I know how to win, and I know how to measure it based on, obviously, muscles, moving, bones out there. That actually made a lot of sense. That's the first time I ever said it like this, and it actually makes a lot of sense now. I know this might sound cocky, but I'm writing a book sitting in front of my laptop alone with some feedback on it. So I'm kind of celebrating my moment here.
What I was thinking when you were talking about the bench press, like the question is, I guess, how do you define a win then? Because someone may be kind of like bench pressing, let's say 100 kg right now. And now you come in and you tell him, hey, take the shoulder blades down and together. And all of a sudden they're like, whoops, the 100 kg can't be moved. And so um, I don't have a question. That's just a thought of mine that probably a lot of people are
Yeah,
going
no,
to.
that is a question because the question is what does that mean for what a win in training is? That's what we're stepping away from teaching exercises and measuring wins on reps and weight.
Yeah.
Of course, that's part of it, but it cannot be the end goal of it, right? Because that would mean on if I reverse that problem, that would mean no matter how I move the weight, it's going to be a win.
But that's
If
what you
I
see often. That's what you see often. I think that's
yeah,
like thanks to social media, it's like, I mean, we see that times and times again, people kind of like posting their PRs, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, yeah, you kind of got that weight up there, but your shoulder was like nowhere where it should be, or like you got your first pull up. Maybe the first pull up is kind of like shitty to poop on it if someone is like, yeah, I got my first pull up, and then you see kind of like the shoulder moving forward. It's kind of like difficult because you don't want to be like potty pooper, but then again it's like, yeah, but is it really? If
okay. So let's break it down. Okay, I'm I'm obsessed with debunking those words like clean technique, show clean technique. Like nobody could explain to me what that means. I've tried to explain my point of view on the bench press and on the squat. That's what my rules are for clean technique. Now we can talk about something and now we can measure it if that's actually happening. All right. That being said, if you want to get your first pull up and you're going to get your chin over the bar, no matter what, I'm going to stand there and cheer on you. Right. But then we need to take the next step. That's an awesome accomplishment, and I love you for doing it. This is awesome, but I want to get you to 10, right? And you're not going to get to 10 if you're going to roll your shoulders forward. This is physically impossible because you have to use your lats at some point, And if you roll your shoulders forward, you cannot use them. So we're both right. I'm cheering for you when you do a shitty looking pull up. I'll fucking cheer on you as much as you want because I really like the heart you put into it and that you actually put work into it. But on the other hand, I'm also want to provide a path to guaranteed progress where I can guarantee you 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you get 10 pull-ups and your shoulder won't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm obsessed about. So we're both right. And that's I love those situations because you're right in getting your first pull-up no matter what. But I'm right in, okay, we need to take a different path and a more structured and organized path to 10 pull-ups. Going back to the 100 kilo bench press. Yes, there's no way you can bench press your current weight with the way I'm suggesting to do it. There's no way. Same story. If you want to stick with 100 kilos for the rest of your life, keep doing what you're doing. If you want to get shoulder pain, keep doing what you're doing. Like I'm not the prophet here. I'm just trying to make guaranteed progress work for everybody. So my point is, yes, you could probably remove like 75 or 80 kilos the way that I just described before, but this is going to ensure your long-term progress. And I know the fitness industry is not interested in long-term progress. I don't care. I am. And I'm interested in your shoulder and your long-term progress. So that means, yes, you're going to take probably a couple of weeks, maybe months, so you can catch up and actually do the 100 kilos the way I suggested with a certain set of rules. But this will guarantee a very easy formula, which is time plus work being put in equals progress. And this is not happening now because you put time in, you put work in, and the progress is not there. Mm-hmm. That's how you get less unmotivated over time. This is what kills motivation. It's the same as you showing up to work for like 10 years, getting no raise, no promotion, nothing. And in year 11, you get fired. You're not overly motivated now to rejoin the company at some point of your life again. But this is how we approach training now. And I'm obsessed with changing that.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Nothing more to say today.
No, I'm still digesting.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. We're gonna post a beautiful page where it's literally on one page how I see training, what the goal is, what the win is, how we can measure it, and who are the players in that game. Bring other questions. If you're struggling with an exercise, if you need some help, well, let us know. We can discuss your case or your videos or whatever you want on the next call. And yeah, I'm obsessed with guaranteeing progress for normal people when they train twice, 3 times a week.